So this is the beginning of the first video for basic soldering, H102 subject in TAFE, and what I'm holding here is some imported Chinese solder, and I make a point of showing this to start the video because I look at it and it says size 60%, diameter 0.8 millimeters. Now we've just seen a video and we've seen a PowerPoint this morning that explains the differences in solders, and there's no way that I can relate this 60% to anything that we saw in the video. Does anybody know what I'm talking about there? Like, what would we expect to see on the side of this solder? 60-40. The 60 representing 60 representing the tin and the 40 representing the lead. 60% tin, 40% lead. So I'm guessing that this means 60% tin, but time will tell. When we go to do a first solder joint with it, we'll know where we're traveling. So we start off then today, although we have just looked at the solder, and I'll put that back onto its little rolling mechanism here. It's nice to have the solder in some sort of a device like this that we can take it from. And maybe while I'm talking about the solder, it's very important that we never just break the solder off like that, because the solder has little capillaries inside of rosin. It's rosin called solder. So it's very important that we, at a minimum, use diagonal cutters to cut the solder, and those two bits I'll put to the side because they've had the rosin extruded when I've stretched it, and they would not give us a good soldered joint. So using the side cutters for the solder, or even using the soldering iron to cut the solder like that, and I've guaranteed then that I have not extruded the solder in that process, and the solder is going to be quite fine to use. I did say in the earlier part of this session, never get lazy and just put the soldering iron down on the bench like that. Always put the soldering iron back into its little holder, because accidents do happen. Alright, start off with some freshly cut wire. I'll be using these wire strippers today, wire cutters and strippers. They do have a cut function here, and then they have the stripping function at the other end. And I'm going to strip off around about 30 millimeters of wire. Now to do this, I'm holding the strippers right down at the bottom end because I want the absolute maximum strength on the cutting jaws at the top. If you try and use these by just putting your hand in the center, it won't do the right cut. You have to use them by squeezing right at the very bottom. And there's our cut wire. And we didn't break any strands out. That's really important. We saw that in the video. We can check there's no extra strands in there. All the strands are here. The lay of the strands, we can see that there's already a lay going away from me. So I'll just continue to wrap that just a tiny bit to keep the strands nice and tight. Some wires have cotton, a piece of cotton inside. If there was a piece of cotton, I will be using the small diagonal cutters to remove the cotton. So now we'll put the wire, whoops, one strand came apart. Put that strand back in. We'll put the wire into the little vise. And very important to make sure that I'm comfortable before I do this soldering. So I'm making sure that where I'm standing here, I'm not going to get the wobbles up, I'm not going to get the shakes up. I'm going to give myself plenty of solder to start with. The soldering iron tip is all black and filthy. It's been tinned already once or twice today, but because of the heat that's going into the element, it does tarnish fairly quickly. So I'll just put a bit of fresh solder on that, and even while it's tarnished, you can see that the solder doesn't go on as readily as we would have liked. And then what I'm going to do, I've got here this, what would I call it? It's like brass all shredded up. I can use that to clean the tip. It's not my favourite device for tip cleaning. It does the job. You can see how clean it's brought the tip up. It does the job, but an alternate to that is the damp sponge. And the tip's running at 400 degrees C. Simply touching onto the sponge blasts off any of that debris. You guys that are sitting down over there, you might want to come over and have a look what we're doing. You can see it from there. Geez, you've got better eyesight than what I've got. Alright, I've tinned the tip. Remember about the heat bridge. I bring the tip up onto the wire and I can hold the tip there for quite a while. Whoops, I've got the wobbles up there. Probably the way I'm standing. And not much heat's going to be transferred, but by the time I add the heat bridge, now we've got things happening and we have to work fairly quickly. Yeah. Keeping the iron in the same place, maybe moving the iron down just a tad, making sure that I do not wick the solder underneath the insulation. I think I've probably got a couple of areas of non-wet near the top, but we'll do a visual inspection on that and we'll see. I do have a tiny little bit of non-wet, quite a bit of non-wet over here. So we'll have to go back and do another one of these. That's a fail, as that is at the moment. That's a complete fail. So let's try that again. Again, strip about 30 millimeters of wire, making sure that we don't damage any of the strands. I probably should have cleaned my hands before I started too, because if I have any oil on my fingers, the oil's going to be on the wire and then that's going to stop the alloying process happening with the solder. Still got plenty of solder. Remember in the video we said that don't start with a small piece that's going to disappear and burn your fingers. Always make sure that you've got enough solder to do the job. Clean the tip, tin the tip a little bit, and try and rest my hand a bit better so I don't get the wobbles up this time. Make the heat bridge. This time I'll move the iron up a little bit. I'm watching very, very carefully what's happening with the wire. Probably a fraction too much solder in some parts of that. But I really don't want any of those non-wet areas to happen again. And this time we don't have, we've got, I think that's a bit of flux, a bit of rosin on the end there. Could be a little bit of non-wet, but overall that would be an acceptable tinned wire. A little bit too much solder down here. It's not as good as some of the jobs that I've done in the past. And that's a shame because this is the first video for this soldering course. But nevertheless, that's what we're going to attempt to do first up in class this morning. So stripping off about 30 millimeters of wire, probably unlike me, wash the hands first, make sure you've got no grease or anything that's going to transfer to the wire, because the tiniest bit of grease or oil is going to impair the solder joint and you don't want that. So I'd like you to do 2 of those. When you've got 2 good ones, bring them both to me for inspection. I'll check them, and once we've all satisfactorily done this, then we'll go ahead with the next project, which is using 2 pieces of wire, wrapping them together and completing the soldered joint. That was video number 2, which is already done. Any questions? Seems pretty easy. Okay.